No one believed he could make it. Not on 3 legs. Not through miles of danger. But love doesn't follow the rules of survival. On the forgotten fringes where civilization ends and desolation begins, an old rusted truck sits, a relic of better days. Its paint, once vibrant red, now peels away like dying autumn leaves. The undercarriage, dark and uninviting to most, has become something else entirely for 2 souls the world left behind. Home. Not the kind with warm lights and welcome mats, but the raw, primal shelter that means survival. A collection of discarded blankets, newspaper, and cardboard forms a nest where 2 unlikely companions have written their own rules of friendship. Meet Max. His chestnut fur bears the scars of a past life, one that ended the day a speeding car shattered his back leg beyond repair. The humans who once called him family made their choice at the vet's office. They chose not to return. What they couldn't know was that in abandoning him, they set in motion a story of loyalty that defies everything we think we understand about the animal kingdom. For Max, the world beyond their rusted sanctuary holds little but danger. His disability, a missing back leg that leaves him with an awkward, dragging gait, makes him vulnerable. Makes him a target. But he's not alone. Shadow emerges from the darkness like her namesake, a sleek black cat with eyes the color of twilight. Her movements are liquid grace, a stark contrast to Max's lumbering shuffle. What draws a cat to care for a dog? What compels a natural loner to share her precious findings with a creature evolution designed to chase her kind? Perhaps it was their shared language of abandonment. Shadow's notched ear and wary gaze tell of street fights and survival. Of a world that showed no kindness until she found it in the most unexpected form, a broken dog who had every reason to give up, but didn't. Their survival dance is perfectly choreographed. When dawn breaks across the skeletal buildings, Shadow slips away into the maze of alleyways. Her mission, scavenging the scraps humanity discards without thought. Sometimes it's half-eaten takeout. Other days, merely crusts and bones. Max's contribution comes in other forms. His body, still large despite his injury, provides warmth through biting winter nights. His deep bark has scattered roaming strays who might otherwise see Shadow as prey. In the complex arithmetic of survival, they've balanced their equation perfectly. Until now. For 6 months, they've beaten impossible odds. 6 months of harsh elements. Bitter cold that froze the ground solid. Downpours that threatened to flood their sanctuary. Scorching days when the metal truck above became an oven. They survived it all, together. That Tuesday evening started like any other. Shadow stretched, arching her back against Max's warm flank. Their ritual goodbye, her sandpaper tongue briefly touching his muzzle, lasted only seconds. Neither could know its significance. She moved like liquid shadow toward the dumpsters behind Joe's Diner, their most reliable food source. Max watched until her black form melted into the gathering darkness. And then, he waited. 1 hour. 2. The familiar scratching that announced her return never came. By midnight, Max's ears perked at every sound, the scuttle of rats, distant traffic, wind rattling through empty buildings. But never her distinctive footsteps. As the first heavy raindrops hammered against the truck above, something stirred in Max's chest. An uneasiness. A knowing. Animals sense things humans have forgotten how to feel. As hours passed, his whimpers grew more desperate. More primal. His good leg pawed at the ground in agitation, wearing away dirt until raw earth showed through. Something was terribly wrong. Shadow had never been gone this long. Not once in 6 months. Not even during the blizzard that had buried their world in white silence. What happened next would test the limits of what love can truly overcome. And raise a question none of us can answer with certainty. How far would you go for the only friend who never gave up on you? Sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen far from human eyes, in places we've abandoned and forgotten. Sometimes heroes walk on 3 legs. 48 hours. The world can change in less time than that. Lives can end. Hope can die. For Max, time had become a cruel master. Each passing hour carved away at the certainty that Shadow would return. Each minute stretched into an eternity of waiting, of listening, of growing dread. A local woman, the one who sometimes left scraps, approached cautiously, setting down a paper bag. The smell of chicken should have made Max's mouth water, his tail wag. Instead, he remained motionless, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Where's your little friend today?" "She's never far from you." The untouched food said everything words couldn't. In the brutal mathematics of survival, refusing nourishment was unthinkable, unless something mattered more than survival itself. As dusk settled once again, Max faced the choice that had haunted him through the endless night. The impossible choice. Stay in the relative safety of the only home he'd known for 6 months, or venture into a world that had taken his leg, his family, his dignity? The world beyond their sanctuary had shown Max nothing but cruelty. The speeding car. The abandonment. The taunting strays who sensed weakness and circled him like sharks whenever he ventured too far. His disability wasn't just inconvenience, it was vulnerability written in neon for predators to see. 3 legs meant slower. Weaker. Prey. But Shadow had never seen him that way. The decision crystallized in his eyes. A shift from fear to determination. One halting movement. Then another. The transition from safety to danger measured in inches that felt like miles. For the first time in months, Max dragged himself beyond their sanctuary's protective shadow. Into exposure. Into danger. The first few yards were the hardest. His good front legs trembled with the strain of pulling his entire body weight forward. His damaged back leg, a stub with scar tissue, scraped against the rough asphalt. Each yard gained came at a price paid in pain. 5 yards out, he paused, chest heaving. A distance that would have been nothing in his 4-legged past now left him gasping for breath. But he didn't turn back. The universe, it seemed, had little sympathy for desperate acts of loyalty. Above, storm clouds gathered like spectators to witness his struggle. The first cold drops struck his back like tiny judgments. The rain, a blessing in summer heat, now transformed into another obstacle. His fur, soaked through, added pounds to his already burdened frame. Water pooled in depressions on the uneven ground, forcing detours that sapped precious energy. What would have been minor inconveniences to any other dog became monumental challenges. A curb. A pothole. Each required calculation. Strategy. The conservation of strength that might be needed for hours or days ahead. As darkness fell fully, the temperature dropped sharply. Each labored breath formed a cloud in the night air, visible proof of life's fragility. Of how easily it could slip away in this unforgiving landscape. His senses, the sharpened tools of survival, now served a different purpose. Every sound triggered hope. Every scent carried possibility. His head lifted at the screech of tires 3 blocks away. At the clatter of a toppled trash can. At the distant yowl of a cat that wasn't Shadow. The gravel pathway leading toward the restaurant dumpsters tore at his already tender paws. Tiny rocks embedded themselves in sensitive pads never meant for this kind of journey. Small spots of blood marked his path like breadcrumbs, if he needed to find his way back. If there was anything to go back to. He paused at the corner where Shadow always turned left. Her routine was etched in his memory, the efficient path she took each evening. Now he followed it like a prayer, hoping each familiar landmark might lead to her. A sound stopped him cold. Low growling from the shadowed alley ahead. 3 sets of eyes reflected the distant streetlight. 3 sets of teeth bared in the universal language of territorial threat. The lead dog, a scarred pit bull mix, took 1 step forward. Then another. In his 4-legged past, Max might have stood his ground. Might have matched threat with threat. Now, the calculation was brutally simple. This confrontation meant death. With agonizing slowness, he retreated. One shuffling movement at a time. The growls followed him, but the pack didn't give chase. Not yet. They were simply warning, this territory isn't yours. But Shadow had come this way. Had passed through this invisible boundary. The detour would cost him time, energy, hope. The storm intensified, water now running in rivulets through the gutters. His keen ears strained through the deluge for any sound, any sign of his friend. Was that movement in the distance? A shadow darker than the surrounding night? Hope rose and fell like waves, each disappointment cutting deeper than the last. For hours, he searched. Each street, each alley, places they'd scavenged together in better times. His normally sharp senses dulled by exhaustion and the constant drumming of rain. When his legs finally gave out, he didn't so much lie down as crumble. His sides heaved with exertion. His eyes, once bright with purpose, now dimmed with the growing weight of impossibility. The city at night was a maze of dead ends and false promises. Of scents washed away by rain. Of shadows that looked like hope until you got closer. How does one dog, a broken one at that, find one cat in a hostile urban wilderness? What force of will could possibly overcome such impossible odds? As the coldest hours before dawn arrived, unconsciousness beckoned like a seductive whisper. The easy path. The end of pain. Of searching. Of hope. But deep in the ancient DNA that binds all canines, from wolves to the smallest toy breeds, lives a stubbornness that defies explanation. A loyalty that transcends self-preservation. With trembling muscles and raw determination, Max forced himself upright once more. Because somewhere in this unforgiving city was the only creature who had seen past his brokenness. Who had chosen him when the world had thrown him away. And he would find her or die trying. What drives us to continue when all logic says to surrender? What power transforms ordinary beings into heroes? Perhaps the answer lies not in strength, but in what we do when we have none left to give. Hope is said to be the last thing to die. For Max, it had become both burden and fuel, driving him forward when every part of him begged for rest. 40 hours. No food. The rain had stopped, but the cold clung to him. Every step now was mechanical, driven only by instinct. The abandoned factory district, their final hunting ground, was a place they rarely ventured. Desperation had brought Shadow here. She'd always been resourceful. But now? The hours passed in a haze of exhaustion. False leads. Dead ends. Hope fading with every step. As night fell, the temperature dropped further. His breath thickened in the air, his limbs stiff with the onset of hypothermia. The drainage ditch stretched before him, an ugly scar through the district. Concrete walls, slick with rain, rose high. Max's legs finally gave out. He collapsed by the edge, his body past the point of protesting. And then, faint as a whisper in the dark, he heard it. A meow. Weak. Distant. But unmistakable. Max's body surged. His head snapped around, ears straining. There. Again. Below, in the ditch, he saw her, Shadow, her black fur matted with blood and mud, one ear torn. Her eyes, once sharp, now half-closed in exhaustion. Alive. But trapped. The walls were too steep. The ledge she clung to was barely wide enough to keep her above the rising water below. Max's heart sank. His 3 legs couldn't scale these walls. He couldn't reach her. But he tried anyway, paws scraping at air, stretching to impossible angles. Desperation made fools of them both. Each attempt brought him closer to falling in himself. Shadow, too weak to move, stretched her trembling legs in an effort to reach him before collapsing back. Max's disability, his missing leg, was no longer just an inconvenience. It was the barrier between life and death. Time was running out. The temperature was plummeting. The water was rising. Her injuries would only get worse. A distant engine hum broke his focus. A car passed on the road nearby, headlights cutting across the wasteland. The driver never saw them. Max's eyes flicked toward the road. A decision formed. He moved. Every instinct told him to stay away from humans. But in that moment, he saw only one path forward. Was it reasoning? A leap of faith? Or something stronger than logic? Sometimes, when there's nothing left to lose, salvation requires the courage to face your deepest fear. Fear and hope rarely travel together. One usually drowns the other. Yet here was Max, somehow carrying both. Behind him, Shadow's life was slipping away, her faint cries fading into the night. Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, a gamble against everything experience had taught him about humans. The same humans who abandoned him when his body broke. The same humans who threw stones when he came too close. The same humans whose averted eyes had exiled him beneath a rusted truck. But tonight, fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. The ditch was 50 yards away. It might as well have been 50 miles. His body, already pushed past its limits, responded with betrayal. Tremors racked his legs. His remaining back limb dragged uselessly. Twice he collapsed. Twice he forced himself up. Behind him, Shadow's cries grew weaker. The sound of surrender. Something primal ignited in Max's chest, a refusal to accept what nature had already decided. He pushed forward, inch by agonizing inch. By the time he reached the roadside, the moon hung high, cold light bathing the empty stretch of asphalt. Silence. The cruelest twist would be to fight this hard, only to find nothing. Then, headlights. A distant glow, growing brighter. With pain that sent fire through his body, Max forced himself upright. Visible. Seen. Inside the approaching sedan, Maria Delgado's thoughts drifted between deadlines, her son's science fair, and whether she'd left the coffee pot on. Then, movement. A dog. Directly in her headlights. Her foot slammed the brake. The car skidded on damp asphalt before stopping just yards away. Most strays run. Most injured animals seek darkness, not light. But this one held his ground. Barking, not in fear, but in something else. Desperation. Maria hesitated. It was late. This wasn't a residential area. Common sense told her to keep driving. But the dog refused to move. His barking sharpened. Urgent. Insistent. She exhaled, reaching for the flashlight in her glove compartment. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped out. The dog fell silent. Watching. Waiting. Then, he moved. Not toward escape, but into the shadows beyond the road. A few steps. A pause. A glance back. A single, sharp bark. Follow me. Maria frowned. What are you? Then, he returned. Gently, he took the hem of her pant leg between his teeth. Tugged. Released. Moved toward the darkness again. A message. A plea. 20 years as a vet tech had taught Maria how to recognize intention. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. Okay, buddy, she murmured. I'm coming. But this better not be how a horror movie starts. The dog moved faster now, his exhaustion momentarily conquered by the miracle of being understood. He led her straight to an overgrown drainage ditch. A concrete scar cutting through the landscape. What am I supposed to be looking at? Then, her flashlight caught them. Two tiny reflections. Unmistakably feline eyes. A black cat, barely moving, stranded on a crumbling ledge above rising water. Oh my God! Maria's heart pounded. This wasn't just a stray barking at cars. This was a dog who had gone searching for help. Not for himself. For his friend. You came looking for help, she whispered. Not a question. A realization. The cat was in critical condition, dehydrated, hypothermic, and too weak to survive much longer. Help was coming, but not fast enough. Maria made her decision. Stay there, buddy. I'm going in." The ditch walls were slick, moss-covered. Every step was a battle for footing. Above, Max paced, whining with every misstep, every slip. When Maria finally reached the ledge, she moved carefully. Even near death, a frightened, injured animal could lash out. "You've been through hell, haven't you, little one?" Her fingers searched for fractures, checked vital signs. "But your friend never gave up on you." The cat barely reacted, only the faintest press of its head into Maria's palm. A final act of trust. She wrapped Shadow in her jacket, securing warmth, protection. Now, the hard part. The climb back up. One hand for herself. One hand for the cat. No room for mistakes. Above, Max barked, encouragement, panic, urgency. Near the top, Maria's foot slipped. Her knee slammed against concrete. The cat's fragile body jerked in her grip. For one heart-stopping moment, they dangled. Then, Max lunged. His teeth found the edge of Maria's jacket. Not pulling. Stabilizing. Holding. A lifeline. Maria pushed. Reached. Found her footing. And then, suddenly, they were safe. She collapsed onto solid ground, chest heaving. 3 hearts beat in uneven rhythm under the cold moon. 1 human. 2 animals. All connected in a moment beyond explanation. "Easy, buddy," she breathed. "She's alive. You did it." Max pressed his nose gently against Shadow's face, a touch so delicate, so intentional, that Maria felt tears sting her eyes. "How did you know?" she whispered. "How did you know to find help?" The answer wasn't something science could explain. Something deeper had driven this broken dog to push past his fear of humans. To seek help when he couldn't provide it himself. Because sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes, they limp on 3 legs. And sometimes, they remind us that love, the purest kind, doesn't recognize limits. Has an animal ever surprised you with their loyalty? Share your story in the comments. And for another incredible rescue, watch our next video, the cat who saved his family from a house fire. The rain had stopped, but the mud remained, slick, unforgiving. Maria's hands trembled as they disappeared into the darkness of the ditch. For 3 days, hope had seemed impossible. Then, a whisper broke through her disbelief. "She's alive." Shadow's body was limp, her once lustrous fur caked in mud. But as Maria cradled her against her chest, a miracle, faint but unmistakable. A purr. Weak, yet defiant. And standing guard, his battered body trembling with anticipation, was Max. The 3-legged shepherd mix had refused to leave the spot. For 3 days, he'd waited. Circling. Whining. Staring into the void. Now, as Maria adjusted her grip, Max froze, his one good ear twitching, his eyes locked on Shadow as if afraid she might vanish again. "Easy, boy," Maria murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it. You found her." Even as she carried Shadow to the car, Max never looked away. Not when she placed the cat gently onto a blanket. Not during the frantic drive. Not when the veterinary team rushed forward. 3 days in a drainage ditch? The vet shook her head in disbelief, inserting N4 into Shadow's frail body. "And you say the dog led you there? Wouldn't leave?" Maria nodded, resting a hand on Max's head. He hadn't moved. His eyes tracked every motion, every touch, every second of Shadow's fight for survival. "I've seen bonds between animals," the vet murmured, glancing at the monitor as Shadow's vitals stabilized. "But this is something else." A pause. By all logic, she shouldn't be alive. Severe dehydration, hypothermia, a fractured leg. Yet here she was. Days later, sunlight streamed through Maria's apartment, illuminating a moment almost too perfect to believe. Max and Shadow, curled together on a plush pet bed. Shadow, once matted and broken, now stretched lazily, her blue-casted leg a quiet reminder of the battle she'd won. Max lay beside her, body curved protectively around his friend, his watchful gaze never truly at rest. The rain, the search, the endless waiting in the mud, it all lived in the past now. But something deeper remained. When Shadow stirred and gently headbutted Max's chin, it was more than instinct. It was gratitude. Love. Max responded with a slow, deliberate lick to her ear, his tail thumping softly against the floor. Maria watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand. "The vet called it a miracle," she said quietly. "I call it love." Some might dismiss it as instinct, the primal urge to protect a pack member. But those who witnessed Max's relentless determination knew better. A disabled dog who refused to give up. Who waited. Who led. Who communicated what no human could. Max couldn't leap into the ditch, couldn't carry Shadow to safety, couldn't even explain what had happened. But he could stay. Bark. Insist. And he did. Because sometimes, the greatest acts of heroism don't come from strength, but from unwavering devotion. In a world where even humans give up on each other too easily, a three-legged dog with a broken ear refused to abandon his friend. And maybe that's the most powerful force of all. Has an animal ever shown you a love that defied the odds? Share your story in the comments. And for another incredible rescue that will leave you speechless, watch our next video.